Okay. Okay, this is my highlight PowerPoint of my unit plan, which is focusing on the theme of identity. So, my name is Natalie Hooper. I am a second year middle school teacher in Minnesota. My anticipated teaching site is Ordine East Middle School, which is where I teach right now. And my intended audience is eighth grade visual arts students, which is also what I teach right now. I have all eighth grade visual arts. The theme is identity. I really wanted to talk about self-portraiture in both traditional and non-traditional methods. And I was very inspired by social emotional learning, specifically the self-awareness pillar of that. And I also wanted to focus on cultural backgrounds and really what makes you who you are. I also wanted to use this as a way for students to explore themselves and different ways of making things. So for project one, we're talking about symbolism, the basics of facial proportions. I have my example and some examples from artists we looked at. And then over on the side, I have the handout that I made for this. So for the handout, it walks you through how to draw a average proportionate person. And then the second page of the handout, they finish the face and add all those facial features. Project two is inspired by Kinde Wiley and Ashley Longshore. We're talking about patterns. This time we're doing a full face, so they are actually um, really getting into proportions here. And then the handout, again, I have over on the side. This is focusing on patterns as well as how those patterns are attached to your cultural heritage. So I have some examples that I wanted them to copy underneath up here. And then in the second page of the handout is a space for them to come up with their own patterns based on their cultural background. For project three, we are doing an abstracted self-portrait inspired by the Ojibwe artist Frank Big Bear, who is a local artist. Um, I have my example down in the corner. I wrote the lesson plan to be done in acrylic paint, but my example is done in color pencils. Frank Big Bear does both. So, and then I also have the Frank Big Bear example and the handout. So the handout for this one is really getting into the nitty-gritty of symbolism, whereas the first project of this unit was kind of just like very surface level. So for this handout, they have to identify some pretty common symbols and then draw their own symbols and explain what they mean. And then on this second page, we're talking more about how we're going to abstract this self-portrait, drawing the lines over it, coloring it in, adding all the symbols around the head, that kind of thing. For for our final project for this unit, the students are making a non-representational self-portrait. I think that this would be really interesting to teach to eighth graders because I think they kind of have it in their brain of what a self-portrait is supposed to look like. So I have some examples of artists that did that. And then I also have our handout. This again is where I'm really leaning into that social emotional learning, drawing how you feel or how you see your feelings. And then on the back side, there's a space for them to kind of list out different shapes, colors, lines, that sort of thing that they feel like would describe themselves and their emotions, what they interpret those to be. For assessment, for most projects that I teach, my formative assessments are check-ins and just reflections when they submit their stuff. And then summative assessment would be the final products as well as the table critique. So I had made this handout to do as a table critique as kind of a lower stakes assessment rather than doing a full class critique. So this is kind of space for them to fill out the things that they commented on and kind of give their reflection of their own artwork. And finally, my hopes for this whole unit is that I really think that with teaching middle school, it's important to allow students to have a space to express themselves and explore who they are and what makes them who they are. I think especially in eighth grade, they're getting ready to go into high school, and this is a really transitional point for them. So I want my students to be confident in their view of themselves, and I want them to be able to express themselves in a whole bunch of different ways. Last up on this PowerPoint is just my resources, the artists and artworks that I referenced. But otherwise, that is just the overview of my unit plan.